Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Book Nook podcast.
It's great to be here.
Today, we're going to be diving deep into a really fascinating book,
Oh, yeah.
Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
So this is actually a revisit
Okay.
to his, famous book, The Tipping Point.
Right.
It came out like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was all about,
Yeah.
how ideas spread
Mm-hmm.
like viruses.
I remember that, yeah.
And he talked about, mavens and connectors and salesmen and all this. So in this new book, Revenge of the Tipping Point,
Okay.
he's kind of taken another look
Right.
at how those ideas have maybe changed or evolved over the last 25 years.
Uh-huh.
So I'm really excited to kind of dig into this with you
Yeah, me too.
and see what we can learn.
I think one of the interesting things that he does right off the bat
Okay.
is he takes that law of the few, right?
Yeah.
And he kind of updates it to what he calls the law of the very, very, very few,
Oh, wow.
where he basically is saying that the impact
Okay.
of like a small handful of people
Right.
has become even more powerful
Oh, interesting.
in this digital age.
So it's gotten even more extreme.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
It's not even just a few anymore. It's like a very, very, very few
Right.
who can really shape things.
So is he saying that, like, before you needed 100 influencers to kickstart a trend,
Yeah.
but now you only need like 5?
It feels like that, right?
Yeah.
You just need a couple of TikTok stars or,
Yeah.
a few key people on whatever platform
Yeah.
and things can just explode.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it that way.
It is. It's a little bit daunting
Yeah.
to think about the power that these very few people have.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, and one of the other things that I thought was really interesting about this book
okay.
is that he actually kind of owns up to being wrong about a theory that he championed in the original Tipping Point,
Oh, right. Yeah.
which was the broken windows theory of crime.
So for those who maybe haven't heard of that,
Yeah.
the idea was that visible signs of disorder,
Okay.
like, graffiti
Right.
or abandoned buildings,
Yeah.
can actually lead to more serious crime.
Okay. Interesting.
Like it creates this environment where people feel like
Right.
the rules don't apply.
Yeah, I see.
And so Gladwell was a big proponent of this theory.
Uh-huh.
And, it was really influential.
Yeah.
But then, things happened.
So what happened that made him change his mind?
Well, one of the big things was New York City.
Oh,
They actually saw a dramatic drop in crime after they eased up on stop and frisk policies,
okay.
which were kind of based on that broken windows idea.
Interesting.
So, that really made Gladwell and a lot of other people
Yeah.
rethink their assumptions.
And this was all happening while he was writing this book.
I believe so, yeah.
It's pretty amazing that he was willing to admit that, he got it wrong.
Right.
A lot of people would just, try to double down
Yeah.
and stick to their original ideas.
It's hard to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
But, I think it's so important to be open
Yeah,
to new evidence and to be willing to change your mind.
absolutely. I think that's how we learn and grow as people.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to, completely change your mind
Oh, yeah.
about something?
Definitely.
It's a humbling experience.
Yes.
But it's important, right?
Absolutely.
To be able to say, okay, I was wrong,
Yeah.
and move on.
And, it kind of ties into this other idea that Gladwell talks about, which is super spreaders.
Oh, right.
So, obviously, we've heard a lot about super spreaders in the context of disease.
Right, like with COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Gladwell is saying that this concept applies to ideas as well. Like, there are certain people who are just really good
Uh-huh.
at spreading ideas.
Whether those ideas are good or bad.
Right, exactly.
That's a little scary
It is a little bit unsettling.
to think about, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who are the super spreaders in my life?
Right.
Who's influencing me?
And are you influencing other people?
Yeah.
And how?
That's a great question.
Yeah. It's like there are these people who are just, really good at getting their message out there.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder,
Uh-huh.
are we all just kind of susceptible
Right.
to being manipulated by these super
A
spreaders?
scary thought.
It is.
But it's something we have to be aware of
Right.
in this day and age.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially with social media and everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It's like a breeding ground
Yeah.
for super spreaders.
Because you can reach so many people so quickly.
Exactly.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It is.
Well, and, speaking of things that are mind-blowing,
Okay.
I also thought that his concept of overstories was really fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what he means by that?
So overstories are basically these kind of like unspoken narratives that shape our beliefs and behaviors.
So they're like these underlying assumptions that we might not even be aware of.
Exactly, yeah. It's like they're operating beneath the surface.
So, like, can you give me an example?
Sure. So one example he uses is the American overstory of opportunity.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
This idea that, you know, in America, anyone can succeed if they just work hard enough.
Right. The American dream.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he argues that this overstory is what explains why people continue to immigrate to the U.S.
Oh, interesting.
Even when there's a lot of political and economic turmoil.
So even when things are tough, people still believe in that American dream enough to come here and try to make a better life for themselves.
It's a powerful narrative.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So how do we become aware of these overstories?
That's a good question.
Right.
I think it takes a lot of self-reflection.
Okay.
And kind of, you know, questioning your own assumptions. Like, why do I believe the things I believe?
Right.
Where did those beliefs come from?
Yeah.
Are they based on, you know, my own experiences, or are they based on something that I've been told?
Right.
Or something that I've absorbed from society?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's not always easy to kind of unpack those things.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important work to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think Gladwell does a good job in this book of kind of getting us to start thinking about those things.
Yeah. He gives us some really compelling examples to kind of illustrate these concepts.
Absolutely.
Like, one of the things I thought was really interesting was his discussion of the shift in public opinion on gay marriage.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That was such a rapid change in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, it seemed like it happened overnight.
Right.
Almost.
And he talks about how that was partially due to, you know, things like the popularity of Will and Grace.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which was a TV show that featured gay characters in a really positive light.
So he's saying that pop culture can actually influence social change.
I think so, yeah. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
When you see people who are different from you represented in a positive way, it can really change your perceptions.
That's true.
Yeah.
It can make you more understanding and more accepting.
Exactly.
So he's basically saying that Will and Grace help to normalize gay relationships for a lot of people.
I think so,
who might not have been exposed to them otherwise.
Right.
That's really interesting.
It's a powerful example of how, you know, culture can shape our beliefs.
Absolutely.
And ultimately our laws.
And that's really what this book is all about, right?
I think so, yeah.
It's about understanding how these tipping points happen.
Yeah.
And how they can change the world. For better or for worse.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just about, you know, positive tipping points.
Right.
He also talks about, you know, how these things can go wrong.
Right.
And he uses the opioid crisis as an example.
Oh, okay.
Which is just, you know, such a tragic example of how a tipping point can have really devastating consequences.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So how does he connect the opioid crisis to tipping points?
Well, he argues that it was kind of a perfect storm of factors that all came together at the right time. You know, you had the pharmaceutical companies that were really aggressively marketing these painkillers. And you had doctors who were maybe, you know, overprescribing them. And you had this kind of cultural shift towards, you know, wanting a quick fix for pain. And so all of these things kind of came together and created this environment where opioid addiction just exploded.
It's kind of scary to think about how these things can happen.
Yeah.
Without us even realizing it.
Right.
Till it's too late.
It's like, you know, the tipping point has already been reached.
Right.
And then it's really hard to turn things around.
So what does Gladwell say we can do to prevent these kinds of negative tipping points from happening?
Well, I think one of the big things he emphasizes is the importance of being aware of the potential consequences of our actions. Like, you know, we need to think about the ripple effects of the things we do and the decisions we make.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, because even small things can have a big impact.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think, you know, another thing we can do is to try to promote positive tipping points. Oh, okay.
Like, you know, to support causes that we believe in, to spread ideas that we think are important, to be the change that we want to see in the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's a great message to end on.
Yeah, I think so too.
So thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course.
For this deep dive into Revenge of the Tipping Point.
It was a pleasure.
It was really fascinating to explore these ideas with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to kind of see how Gladwell's thinking has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, we encourage you to check out Revenge of the Tipping Point for yourself.
Definitely.
You can find a link to purchase the book in our episode description.
And be sure to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast.
And leave us a review.
We really appreciate your support.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.